Where do I find it, please? Actually, I've got it separately, but yes, I've got it. I've got it. It's fine.
I, state your name, please. Vanessa Kussie,
Solemnly swear
Please.
swear
that the evidence
that the evidence
I shall give
I shall give
to this commission
to this commission
in this case
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Please take a seat. Miss, have I pronouncing your name correctly? It's Vanessa Kussie?
Kussie.
Kussie. Now pull that down towards you a little and bring the whole thing a little bit towards you, all right? That's it.
Good.
Now that bottle of water is there for you to use, all right? And I know that this is not going to be easy for you.
No, it's not.
We appreciate your coming along to tell us what you have to say. You are unrepresented. That's not a problem. I'm here to look after you, all right?
Yep.
So you take your time. You've provided a statement to us, which is in the bundle, and everybody here has it, right? What you need to understand, Miss Kussie, is there's not a single person here who does not have a considerable degree of sympathy for your position, all right? So you take your time. Just pause if you need to pause. It's entirely up to you. As I understand what you're going to do is you're going to read the statement that you've provided to us, all right? It's got a few pages, so it'll take a little while. And you just take it in. You want a break, you just ask me for a break, all right? You want to pause for a minute, take a drink of water, you do that, all right? This is intended to provide you with the best possible environment in which you can give your evidence for everyone to hear, all right?
Yes.
So make sure you speak clearly, because we've got to hear what you have to say. As I say, pull that thing right towards you a little bit. That's it.
Yes,
You've
sir.
got the statement in front of you, haven't you?
Yeah.
All right, so you start when you're ready, all right, and tell us what it is that you put into that statement for us all to consider, all right?
This is my statement that what I've been going through since
Will you
February.
start off by telling us, at
Yeah.
paragraph 1, I am the common law wife of the late Rishi Nagasa. Right.
Start
Take
off
it
there.
from there, if you would, please.
What I want to say, sir, is that prior to this, what I'm going to say now, my husband and I had this conversation before this tragedy had happened, 2 days before it had happened. So I was like a little detective asking him questions. And when it came to reality, it was my nightmare. So what I'm stating here is what I had went through personally,
Yes.
okay?
Right. Well, that's what we want to hear. Yes.
I, Vanessa Kussie, says as follows. I am the common law wife of the late Rishi Nagasa. We were together for 13 years. Our son Nashik Ranveer Nagasa is 3 years old. Rishi was also known as Ryan at home, and as blacks at work, I called him Ryan. Ryan was a diver. He was a permanent employee of LMCS. He worked for LMCS for over 25 years. Friday, 25th February 2022. On the 25th February 2022, I received a phone call about 5 p.m. from my sister-in-law, Ria. She asked if Ryan was at home or at work. I told her he went to work. I heard the trembling of her voice, and she asked if anyone called from LMCS. I said no. I asked her what happened. She took a few minutes to answer. She said she did not know how to tell me, but she understood there was an accident at work, and Ryan, her brother, and others were sucked into a pipeline. Fuel company, Limited Paria. She said that she knows this because she knows someone out at sea who called her and told her they had known Ryan as a brother. And he is one of the persons who was sucked into the pipe. This was the first phone call I received. About half an hour later, I got a phone call from someone asking me to call a fisherman at sea. I had known this guy. His name's Avinash. I went and called him on my phone. He told me that he had to tell me my husband died. And he gave his condolences to me. He told me they were looking for Ryan's body out at sea. I asked him how he got his information. He said his Coast Guard, his friend, called him, told him they were looking for bodies out at sea, and they alerted all fishermen to help look for them. I then called LMCS office, but no one answered. I also called some of Ryan's friends. Nobody picked up. I started panicking. My Uncle Alan, a local counselor, called me. He heard my voice and asked if I was sick. I told him no. He hung up the phone, and I called my mom, and within minutes, my family was at my home. They heard my screaming. I was screaming so loud, the corners of my street could have heard me. I pounded the ground. I rushed to my son, Nashik. I picked him up. I went to my prayer room and I started to pray. I kept calling Ryan's phone. I keep begging God to let him answer his phone. But it kept ringing out. My Uncle Alan came and his wife Shamala came out. He asked me what I wanted to do. I just wanted to be at Paria. I told my uncle this. Everyone who was at my home left. We were head up to Paria. Within about half an hour or so, we were at Paria, Point of PM. This is about 6:30 to 7 p.m., sorry. When I got there, I was still shaking. My Uncle Alan went up to the security at the entrance. There were 4 of them. He told them he understood there was an accident, and we came to find out. He told them I was the wife of Rishi. The reply was from the security. This is the first time they are hearing about an accident and they didn't know. My Uncle Alan asked the security officers for a phone number to call a secretary at Paria. They said they had nothing to give him. They didn't know the phone number at the office. He told them, the security officers, he was a local government counselor for Kuva Tabaki Talparo. But they told him they didn't have any number for him. By this time, we saw vehicles coming in and out of the compound. We were right outside by the security booth on the road. My uncle stopped a few vehicles and asked if there were accidents inside. One person who said he works for Paria. He told us he understood there was an accident. The guys are trapped in the pipeline, but they are hearing knocking, so don't worry, ma'am. He said they, Paria, was trying to help rescue them. I then relaxed a little bit based on what I heard. My Uncle Alan told him, Rishi Nagasa is my husband. The man said, don't worry, ma'am, we are going to get help. We are going to get help for them. Help is on its way. About 5 or 10 minutes or so, a few of LMCS workers going into the compound, I saw them. I stopped them. One of them, known as Brown, He is one of Ryan's friends. He said he cannot say much because Paria wasn't given any information about what is going on inside. Another person who was with him, who is also an employee at LMCS, told me they were stopped from getting help from the Coast Guard. I felt they didn't want to scare me and were giving me like small details. In less than half an hour, we saw an ambulance coming out of Paria. And when they were halfway through, my Uncle Alan stopped the driver. He asked the driver if there were any accidents that took place in there. The driver said he didn't know exactly what is going on, but he can only say that someone got took out from a pipe. He wasn't even sure if it was a pipe or he got injured, but he was filled with oil. They took him to San Fernando General Hospital. We asked him if the person they took out was Rishi or what was his name. He said he don't know. We should go to Sando Hospital if we want to find out. My uncle asked him if there was someone in the ambulance at that time. He said no. My uncle asked if he knew someone we could call. He told us to hold on a few minutes. When he found out, it was Christopher Budram who came out. My Uncle Alan went back to the security and said, all these vehicles going in and out of this for the second time, an ambulance is coming out of the compound. And they still say no accident. They still don't know anything about what is going on, and not even a number to call the secretary. He said, a big company like this, and you don't have a number to call someone, and there's no one to help us, to give us information. One of the security ladies came out. Two others came out after her. They told us we can park inside the car park. There are two other vehicles inside there. She said she doesn't know if they are families of the victim. My Uncle Alan just nodded. We went into the compound in the car park. There were two vehicles parked inside. I saw Ryan's van.
That's when you told your son, Nikolai,
I
to walk
told my
with you.
elder son, Nikolai, to walk with me by the van. He held my hand and walked by the van, hugging me. We were both crying. I held on to his van, and I begged God not to let anything happen to him. I said, please let this be a dream. Don't let this be happening. We stayed at the car park until 4 a.m. on the 26th February, 2022. No one from Paria came out and spoke to me. No one from LMCS called me or told me what happened. Saturday, 26th February. We went home to shower, change our clothes, and were taken back. From the vehicles we taken back with my Uncle Alan and others, my brothers and my sister, my cousins, everybody. We just went back to Paria. Nobody went to work. My son Nikolai and Nigel also went. My brothers Chase and Navin, my sister Anissa, as well as his husband. Everybody just headed back to Paria. The security said the car park is full. We can park and wait outside by the road. The security had no information this morning. Part of the barrier was up to at the car park. And we still went and we drove inside and parked. We went under the shed in the car park. I think it's a breakfast shed. There were no chairs, but some of us bought our own chairs. There were other families there. The Kurban family was there. Fazal Kurban's wife, Celisha, and her sister were present. His son Michael was also there. They spoke to me and shared what information they had. I believe that because of the state I was in, they didn't want to frighten me with too much details. They told me based on the information they had, there was a swirl in the water at first, thinking the men were at sea. They said then that they realized the men were trapped into the pipeline and there was a suction. They said that Ryan got sucked in first into the pipeline. They, the Kurban, also said some people from inside Paria heard pounding on the line. They said Paria also didn't want the Kurbans to go inside the compound. Michael told me when Christopher came out, he told him his father was right behind, and they didn't want to try and save his father and the rest of them. They did want to save his father and the rest of them, but the hose was too short. He said they came back out to get equipment, and then they were stopped by the Coast Guard. We waited outside under the shed. I saw someone parked in the car park across from where we were. I assumed it was another family. I walked by, asked who they were related to. They were Yusuf Henry's mother and sister. His father and stepfather also were there. None of the families had any information from Paria or LMCS. Everyone was just there being supportive to each other, hoping we would get a chance to go into the compound. Nicholas and his brother Michael were trying to get into the compound, but they were denied. They were told they needed to get a pass. Members of the public started coming in to drop water, chairs, food for the families. This started as an incident was being reported in the news. The media also came at the car park. Paria turned away trucks, tents, toilets, and chairs. The Oilfield Workers Trade Union, OWTU, also came to give us support. They spoke to Paria and told them the ladies who were in the car park had to go all the way to KFC, Churches Stricken, to use the washrooms. Paria then permitted toilets and the tents and chairs to be delivered to them. Many times we were at the car park. The security told us we weren't supposed to be there. The police also came to the car park. Some of the officers had guns. The OWTU spoke to the police. The OWTU tried to give us hope, encourage us to be strong. The OWTU was getting their information through some resource from the workers at the compound at Paria. Around lunchtime, someone from Paria came to the car park to let us know Paria wanted to have a meeting with us at the Petrotrin Sports Club. But the meeting would be held at 2:30 p.m. At the meeting, 2:30 p.m., the immediate families were there. One member of the media, who I know as Miss Radica, was present. She started to record the meeting, but she was asked to stop. Everyone was asked to turn off their phone. I think after the arguments within both companies and family, they were asked they can record after. Minister Stuart Young, Mr. Mushtaq Mohammed, and Mr. Colin Piper were present. Minister Young said they were doing everything in their power to get the divers out. Mr. Young said we had his word on that. He looked at Mr. Piper and Mr. Mohammed, and he asked them if he was right, and they said yes. They are doing what they can at the moment to get the divers out. Mr. Mohammed laughed. He chuckled, he bent down his head and laughed. People were annoyed by his laughter. Someone asked him what the joke was about. We were in a crisis. I told them I have a little baby waiting home for his dad, and all you can do is laugh? People asked questions about the pipeline. Most of the time, the Kurbans were asking questions. Minister Young could not have responded to any of the questions. He didn't know the details of the pipe. Mr. Mohammed, Mr. Piper answered the questions. They were arguing back and forth. I cannot recall all the questions and answers. Paria. did not give us any detail of any rescue plan. They didn't know who was there. Yusuf, Fazal, and Ryan's family were in attendance. I can't recall if anyone from LMCS was there. This meeting lasted about 2 hours. We signed our names, put our telephone numbers on a sheet of paper. When the meeting ended, we went back to the car park. After the meeting, a person named Tara called me. She said she was a secretary at Paria. She told me that Paria wanted to communicate by WhatsApp or email rather than speak with me on the phone. The other families didn't want this. We wanted answers. We didn't want to be texting. We wanted Mr. Muhammad or Mr. Piper to come out and speak to us. Tara kept calling me 3 to 4 hours during that day and every day forward. As the hours passed by to say there was no update, Paria was trying its best to rescue the divers. That's what Tara told me. This information I got all through the night. I stayed under the shed the whole time to go home, just change and come back. Sunday, 27th February 2022, sometime between 7:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. Sunday, 27th February 2022, we heard it through the news that instead of recovery, Paria is now moving to recovery. I then called Tara to confirm. This is how we found out about the change in plan. We stayed in the car park all day Sunday. Monday, 28th February 2022. On Monday, Tara called me in the afternoon before it got dark. Russell, I was in the car park at Paria. She told me they recovered 3 bodies. And one was Rishi Nagasa, Yusuf Henry, and Fazal Kurban. I remember I started seeing dark. There was a generator close by, which I tried to grab because I knew I was going to fall. Then I called my sister Anissa, who was not too far from me. My sister and my uncle Alan came looking for me at that time. My family held me as I fainted. Someone brought a chair, put me to sit down. Coming out of the daze, my sister asked, "Who called me?" I told her what Tara told me. They then put me into my brother-in-law Inky's car. We were trying to get me to come out of the daze. The media was there. I recall some persons were quarreling with the media to get away from me. Fazal Kurban's wife, Celisha, also came out and asked me who told me the bodies had been recovered. I told her it was Tara. My sister Anissa then took my phone from me and took messages from Tara on that day forward. Tuesday, 1st March 2022. I left home 6 a.m. on Tuesday, 1st March 2022. to go to the Forensic Science Center in St. James to identify Ryan's body. The body I viewed was swollen very badly and covered in oil. I could not recognize the body. It was eventually determined the body was Ali Jr. and not Ryan based on the clothing. My family, including my uncle, remained under the tent all day Tuesday. I went home after viewing the body. Wednesday, 2nd March 2022. I went to Paria car park on Wednesday. However, Paria didn't want me on the compound. During one conversation with Tara, a man took away the phone from her, told me very roughly that it doesn't make sense I am at the car park. When there is news, they would let me know. I told him I am not going anywhere. I'm staying right there. Come move me. During this time, Tara and I had a few words. And I know I did give her some truly nice slang, and I did apologize to her the next morning. At some point, there were a meeting with LMCS and family. I can't recall if this was on Tuesday or Wednesday. Mr. Kazim Ali Jr., Sr., told us he did try to help in any way he could. He said he tried many times to get through to Paria, but Paria kept asking him to show a plan for rescue, which he did. He said Paria kept him going to his office to do a rescue plan to show Paria what they have. He said Paria kept turning him down, telling him it would not work, even though he had divers who were willing to go in. He said he tried everything in his power to get through to the Coast Guard, but they stopped LMCS. Michael Kurban also told me there were 2 speedboats came with divers with gears to help, but the Coast Guard pointed guns at a distance to shoot anyone who came closer. There were no more news on Wednesday from Paria. On Thursday, I, together with all my family, about 12:20 a.m., my uncle, my mom were at my home. They left that time. I went upstairs with my sons. My phone rang about 12:35 a.m. I recognized the number from the time the phone was ringing. It was Paria. Tara called. She said, "Condolences. We have found Rishi." She said that I should go to the Foreign Science Center 7:30 a.m. the next morning, which I did. I went with my brother-in-law, Enquiry, my eldest son, Nikolai, and my uncle, Alan. A lot of people had been telling me Ryan died first, so his body would be decomposed by the time he would be in pieces. Tara had also told me they wanted to make sure they would do their very best to take him out in one piece. Everything Tara told me, I stopped believing. After I had seen the body on Monday, I prayed and prayed because I kept begging God, please don't let Ryan come out in pieces. I put myself to view the worst, but I was able to identify his body in less than 10 seconds. He looked normal. I formed the view that he died not too long ago. I identify him based on his clothes and the scar he had on the back at a previous accident he had from a fallen gate not too long ago home at my house. Ryan's body looked like, to me, like if you take a bucket of water and you just throw it on my husband. He was not swollen, he was nowhere to decompose, nowhere. I would like to add that Ryan was the breadwinner of the family. I am a housewife. He is the only father my elder boys knew. I loved him. He loved them as their own. We were together for 13 years. He started building a home for us. We were going to get married this year. We were going to do something to invite everyone. He said he wanted a real wedding. This year, he said, we were going to finish the house. All his friends used to give him jokes about when he's going to get married. Our son, Nashik, his right eyeball. For years, we wanted to have a child. We got pregnant 12 years ago. I had a miscarriage. We named her Nicolette. So he kept dreaming for this child. Finally, we did have our own son. Ryan was so happy when he found out I was pregnant. He did everything for me. This had been a great loss to my family. My second son, Nigel, He's not speaking with anyone. He just shakes his head and nods if anyone talks to him. My other son, Nikolai, he's always with me all the time. They are not the same children.
Take a moment. Take a moment, Miss Kussie. Self-evidently not easy. Thank you very much indeed for coming. I appreciate your evidence very much. We'll be taking it into account in our decisions that we have to make, all right? Thank you very much for coming. You can stay or leave as you choose, all right? If you want to stay, you know where you can sit at the back.
Yes, I'll stay, sir.
Thank you very much indeed.
Because I want to give the other family support.
Of course, of course. Thank you. I think, Mr. Maharaj, is it Catherine Ali? What of Miss, of Jamie Manodath-Ali? Thank you. Yes, let's have that, please. Yes, please.
I,
Jamie Manodath-Ali,
solemnly swear
that
the evidence
the evidence
I shall give
to this commission
in this case
shall be the truth,
the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes,
Good
please take a
afternoon.
seat. Thank you very much for coming. You are Jamie, is that,
Yeah.
I got that right? And you're the wife of Kazim Ali.
Yeah.
And you provided a statement to us dated the 28th of September of this year. Right. Last year, I should say, yes. Thank you, as I say, for coming. I know this is not going to be easy, but if you would do your best, as I say, that statement that you provided, you have it in front of you,
Yes,
do you?
I do.
Yes. If you would read it then for us. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I, Jamie Manodath-Ali, say as follows. I am 41 years old. I'm a registered nurse and I work mainly at the Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex Pediatric Ward as a certified pediatric nurse. I am the wife of Kazim Jeremiah Ali Jr., who on the 25th of February 2022, with 4 others, survived an accident on a project at the Bird 6 Pointe-a-Pierre, only to be abandoned to die with 3 others some 40 hours later in a pipeline in Paria Fuel Trading Company Limited, Paria premises, on Paria's instructions. We have 1 infant child together, Adama Maria Ali, born the 11th of December 2018. Around 4 p.m. on Friday, 25th February 2022, my father-in-law, Mr. Kazim Ali Sr., came to my home and told me there had been an accident. When I saw his face, I knew it was serious. He said there was an accident and that Kaz and 4 other workers were believed to be in the pipeline. He told me the names of the other workers. He told me that it was serious and there could be fatalities and rescue efforts were being undertaken. I asked him whether they had oxygen, how much they had, and how long they would last there for. Right after hearing this, I got my daughter and I prayed. Within 5 minutes, my father-in-law got a call and told me that 1 person was out. He told me it was Christopher Budram, and he said that everyone was alive and there was hope. My father-in-law told me that Christopher Budram had emerged unaided from the line to the top of the riser from where he was assisted into a boat to go ashore. I knew the other divers, and I was also familiar with the LMCS team who were at the scene. All of them were able-bodied men, including my husband. The sea was his life. I felt that they were good at what they did, and they would find a way out. At this time, I contacted a friend at the San Fernando General Hospital Accident and Emergency Department and was assured that they were going to be on standby all night to attend to Christopher, Budram, and the others when they came out. I also packed a hospital bag for my husband for when they came out. On the 25th of February 2022, there was no communication from Paria to me. All the communication that I had was through my father-in-law. And I also kept in touch with LMCS employee Rudolph Gonzalez, also known as Matthew, who was at the scene. I called him about every hour. I was informed by Kussie Sr. that LMCS personnel were trying to coordinate a rescue effort. He told me that there were a number of divers on site, and this information also came from my husband's friend, Dave Ali, and some of my husband's friends who also went out to the site to render assistance. I am aware that Michael Kurban tried to dive but was stopped. After this, I was informed by Kussie Sr. that LMCS personnel and volunteers were not being permitted to conduct any rescue operations, and that such operations were being handed over to the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard. Throughout the night of the 25th February 2022, on the morning of Saturday, 26 February 2022, I kept in contact with Kussie Sr. and Rudolph Gonzalez, who was on the barge at Berth 6. Both kept telling me that they were still waiting on permits from either the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard or Paria to conduct rescue operations. Mr. Kussie Sr. said he was urgently pushing for immediate rescue operations. At around 4 p.m. on Saturday, 26 February 2022, I went to the main gate at Paria's head office and met with family members of the other workers who were waiting on information regarding rescue. I stayed for about half hour. I was looking for relatives of the other workers in order to speak with them. I only knew Vanessa, Rishi Nagasa's wife. She said they were just waiting and no one else knew what was going on. Everyone present was upset because of the lack of information and because nothing was being done to rescue them, the men. My father-in-law was in a meeting with personnel of Paria at this time. He told me that personnel from Paria wanted to meet with me to provide an update and would come to my home. I then headed home. Around 6 p.m., Paria's general manager, Mr. Mushtaq Mohammed, and his party, his security, Nerissa Davis, and another person came to my residence. This is the first time that anyone from Paria made contact with me. A number of my husband's friends who had been out at the site on Friday and all day on Saturday were present for this meeting. The general manager informed me that they were switching to recovery efforts, and this was met with an almost violent, meaning angry reaction, because as far as his friends were concerned, they had witnessed no rescue attempts being made, nor was any effort made to determine whether my husband and his co-workers were still alive. I thought that such a decision to move to recovery without any determination of survivors was premature and cruel. What he was saying was not what I wanted to hear. It was noise to me. The only thing I heard clearly was switching from rescue to recovery. Paria's corporate communications officer, Nerissa Davis, who was also present at my home, she promised to keep me updated regularly, but this did not happen. I next heard from her via WhatsApp when she sent me a press release on Sunday, 27 February at 4:58 p.m. I messaged her at 9:24 p.m. on Sunday. I asked her, "What is the latest update? You promised updates throughout the night. None was sent. It has been more than 24 hours since you spoke to me, and the situation remains the same." She responded at 12:01 p.m. on Monday, 28 February 2022, and said, "Dear Jamie, this is Nerissa. If you are available, I would like to provide an update, please." I think I may have missed a call from her, before she sent this message. I spoke to her subsequently, and she told me that Paria had started pumping operations from Boot 5. I asked Mr. Kazim-Ali Sr. to find out whether we could go to the site when the recovery was being done, as I was still hoping my husband and his friends would emerge alive. He informed me that no one was being allowed at the site and that all phones and cameras were being taken from on-site personnel by Paria, and that the recovery area was screened off. No one from LMCS was present at the recovery efforts. I was holding out hope. We were considering going out with a friend's boat to the site, but Paria would not allow anyone there. I can't recall who informed me of the recovery of the bodies on Monday, 28, 2022. I remember the Prime Minister saying that 4 bodies had been recovered when only 3 had been recovered. My mother, my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, my husband's sister, went to the Forensic Sciences Center to identify my husband's body. This was the first day my daughter had ever been sick, and I stayed home with her. Having worked in a large hospital, I've heard of and seen many people rescued from near impossible situations, like burning vehicles and buildings, road accidents. I find it a callous disregard for human life to claim it was too dangerous to rescue them, particularly as a bruised and injured Christopher was able to make his way unaided from the air pocket to the surface and is still alive.
Yes. Well, thank you very much indeed for coming. I know that's not easy for you, so thank you so much. You are free to go, and obviously you can stay and sit at the back. Thank you. Mr. Maharaj, is it Catherine Ali now? Yes, thank you. 1597, I think. Hello.
I, Catherine Ali,
solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that the evidence
that the evidence
I shall give
to
this commission
in this case
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Thank you so much for coming, Ms. Ali. Mrs. Ali, you're the mother of Kazim,
Yes.
and obviously the wife of his dad, Kazim-Ali Sr.
That's correct.
I know it's not easy, but we appreciate your coming very much indeed. So take your time. If you need a break, just ask, all right? I think you have a copy of the statement
I
you
do.
provided us
Yes.
in front of you, yes? Thank you. If you just tell us what you put in that statement, please.
Yes, I am the mother of Kazim Jeremiah Ali Jr. On Friday, the 25th of February 2022, at approximately 4:15, I learned about a serious accident in Pointe-Pierre involving our son and 4 workers through a phone call from my husband, Kazim Sr. He had trouble getting through to me as I was on the road to Toko. I understood from the phone call that there was a serious accident and that 5 divers were missing, including Kazim. I understood that I should come home immediately. I had just arrived in Toko and returned immediately to Marabella, to the home of my son and his wife Jamie, arriving at about 7 p.m. I was brought up to date on what had happened by my husband, and I learned of the survivor, Christopher Boudram, had brought himself. He had returned to the surface unaided, and of the interruption of the rescue plans for bringing the other 4 men to the surface. I was informed that Christopher Boudram brought himself unaided and was assisted out of the pipe. He said that the other divers were all alive in the pipeline and to go for them, and he promised that he would go back for them. I was in regular contact with my husband, and he provided me with updates. LMCS personnel remained on site Friday evening, waiting for rescue dive permits, listening to the missing divers, communicating distress calls. Several dive vessels and volunteer divers came to the berth number 6 site to render assistance to rescue the men from the pipe. Paria still refused to allow rescue, and in desperation, LMCS workers on the barge contacted the media to agitate and pressure Paria to take or allow action. On the 25th of February, I was party to phone calls between my husband Kazim and Paria Fuel Trading Company Limited, arguing for work permits to allow a dive rescue by LMCS divers, and or the many dive experts gathered at berth 6, volunteering their service and having all the resources on site. I was in the same room as my husband while he was on those phone calls, and his telephone was on speaker. I don't recall who he was talking to on the phone at Paria. My understanding is that LMCS was seeking to perform a rescue on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Also, Paria seized all documents on the LMCH barge, which included certain permits to work. Paria's multiple decisions to violate the right to human life and the right not to be subjected to cruel and inhuman suffering remain unconscionable. Paria made these decisions as those inside the pipe continued tapping out distress calls well into Saturday, demonstrating proof of life. Paria instructed the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard to enforce their decision not to rescue, and armed members of the Coast Guard boarded the LMCS barge and carried out Paria's instructions. These were the updates which were given by LMCS personnel who were out there on the site to my husband. I heard a conversation between my husband and another person. The person said they heard tapping. They heard SOS code. I heard Kazim tell them to respond by tapping back so they would know they were heard. He said, tap louder and see if they tap louder, and then tap softer to see if they tap softer. They subsequently informed Kazim that when they tapped louder, a louder tap was returned, and when they tapped softer, a softer tap was returned. For me, interactive communication was established, conveying that the divers were alive. The tapping transmitted meaning, and the divers in the pipe were making SOS sounds and wanted to live. Throughout Saturday the 26th and Sunday the 27th, I witnessed at LMCS ongoing discussions between Kazim Ali Sr., his brothers Imtiaz and Hasib Ali, and former senior Petroton staff. This team also attended meetings with Kazim to convince Paria management to implement the rescue plan for the 4 men. This team were trying to do everything they could to address the situation, given the urgency of the situation. They prepared for the meeting with Paria, returned from the meeting with Paria in order to put things in place requested by Paria, and then returned again to Paria. 3 days of meetings, including in-person commitments from experienced commercial volunteer rescue divers, failed to change Paria's resolve not to conduct any rescue mission or to issue LMCS permits to resume the rescue of our people. They lied in their communications, claiming they were doing everything possible, dismissed Christopher Budram's urgent request to go back for them, who were waiting to be rescued, and did not respond to the continuous tapping out of distress calls. In a deadly runaround, pretending to be serious about rescue, yet having decided on recovery, Paria caused severe suffering to those in the pipeline, those on site, and those ashore. The strain of holding tensions, bristling to act urgently, and outraged by deliberate delay, generated friction, anguish, and torture. On Saturday morning, we met with family and friends who were locked outside Paria's gate, witnessed and objected to police harassment to disperse us, and sought information and counselling for them. LMCS provided trauma support through printed material, a hotline, an introduction to a psychotherapist, and sessions with trauma team professionals of the Franciscan Institute, and stress relief laser therapies. Paria never contacted me directly with respect to the incident. I identified the body of our only son, Kazim, on Tuesday, the 1st of March at St. James. Kaz and his father were very close and proudly ran LMCS together. It was wrong to bar a father from saving his son, and wrong to bar Michael Kurban from saving his father. All 4 LMCS men have families and friends who love them. Kaz and his wife Jamie are still in love. Paria's process lacked justice and integrity. There was no leadership, preparedness, or morality in Paria's decisions that killed 4 LMCS men who waited excruciatingly in the pipe until they could breathe no more.
Thank you very much indeed for coming. Your evidence is much appreciated, all right? You can stay or go as you please, obviously. Thank you once again. Now, we've reserved our position on 2 other witnesses. Now, I understand that there's evidence from a member of the Kurban family from a statement that has been provided to us. Am I right that it is Celisha Kurban who is going to read that statement? Is it Mr. Ramadan who's going to read it? All right, Mr. Ramadan. Yeah, I think it would be more convenient if you sat down so that we can all hear what you're saying.
Thank you.
And I'd be grateful if you would just read the statement and no more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Statement by the Kurban family, and certainly from Celisha Kurban, the wife of the deceased Faisal Kurban. On the 25th of February 2022, Faisal Kurban left home to go to work 8 a.m. in the morning. In the afternoon, his wife Celisha Kurban got a call from her son, Nicholas, saying that Faisal and his diving team were stuck in a pipe at work. But it hasn't been long, and that not to worry, that, quote, we will get them out. It was all okay. Just a mishap at work. Hours later, family members gathered at a parking lot in Paria's compound, waiting on news of Faisal's whereabouts. Within 2 hours, family members of the other divers came to the parking lot, awaiting news as well. They heard no more news. However, all the family members knew that so many people were on site, including Faisal's other son Michael and Nicholas, who are experienced in the diving field, among people who work with Faisal on a day-to-day basis, his colleagues, his friends. So there was hope. There was hope for hours. All the family members expected that the divers were being helped and they would be rescued and everything would be fine. Until around 8 p.m. when Michael called from on site, saying that things weren't looking good. Despite that call, Celisha had all hope that her husband would be okay. utmost faith that he and his friends would come out of the pipe alive, just that it would take a little more time. She believed that all hands were on deck, given the gravity of the situation, and that because of that, there was no way the divers wouldn't be rescued. All family members were waiting in the car park, expecting to see the divers alive as soon as they had been rescued. Faisal had gone to work on similar jobs over the span of more than 30 years and had come back home safely, every time. So it was very easy to hold on to hope. Most of the days on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday were spent at the Paria car park as well. The media was present every day, getting the story out to the public, which we appreciated. Many rights activists helped as well in getting the story out there, and it showed when members of the public and friends brought food, drinks, shelter, and lights, and many donations from various other local businesses offering assistance in any way they can. Whether that be anything they needed, waiting in a car park, or for reaching out for help for the men stuck in any way they could. This effort from friends, family members, bystanders, and members of the public continued until Monday evening. There was a meeting with Paria on Saturday where they told us they were trying their best. After that, Paria communicated periodically with Faisal's family via WhatsApp, but the communication was sparse and vague and not very helpful. If it weren't for personal communication with LMCS workers, they would not have been privy to any updates. The only times they heard from Paria after that were the official statements that were issued for the public, which was not enough. They expected more communication and help from Paria, but it was not given. After the news on the 28th, all came crashing down. Their lives changed forever. We lost Faisal. All the good times became just memories. He was a family man. His family was the most important thing to him. Everything he did was for his family, and his family is who they are because of him. We owe everything to him. He loved us, and we continue to love him. He always knew how to have a good time. He is missed every day, especially during the recent Christmas season, which was without much joy or happiness, but passed with an air of sadness. Many acts of kindness and donations were offered to us during the season from members of the public and local companies. However, it should be noted that Paria has made no such effort. Just after the Christmas season came, what would have been Faisal's and Celisha's 34th wedding anniversary, which was a day of heartache and grief for Celisha, and later this month would have been his birthday, which will be a day full of rose spirits for his family. Without the tremendous support from her family members, especially Celisha's brothers and sisters, from the hours waiting in the car park to present day, she would not have been able to cope as well as she has thus far. His family will not rest until justice is served. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Well, that is all the evidence from the victims that we will hear, victims' families that we'll hear today. Maybe it all, we'll see. In the interim, we have evidence, I think, from Dr. Chetty. Yes, thank you very much. And is he ready and available to give evidence now? Thank you. Yes, his statement is at 3232, and I think given the shortness of time, we've not been able to do a full summary of his evidence, but we're going to, I think, is it you, Mr. Bissessar? Right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, is he being allowed to give evidence and return for cross-examination? Because speaking for myself, I have not been able to read his statement far more to digest it.
Well, just a moment, Mr. Chetty. Take a seat, would you? Yes, thank you. I indicated this morning that we had received this on Friday, and I made clear that we were concerned about this evidence being provided late. I did invite anyone to express any objection to his evidence being given this afternoon, which I had indicated we were going to seek to do. I've had no objection up until now, Mr. Peterson. I mean, we are struggling under the same, or labouring under the same time constraints as have you. And I do understand that it has been served extremely late. Nonetheless, I took the view with the team that this was important evidence that needed to be heard before this commission.
Well, yes, sir, I could not even make that determination, but what I thought, why I did not object earlier, is that he would be called, so we use up some of the time this afternoon instead of losing all of it, and we tag him on to Incotech tomorrow, so we finish all the evidence tomorrow. So I did not think it was prudent.
Are you asking for time to the extent that you would wish to reserve your position until tomorrow?
Yes, sir, but I'm not objecting. That's the point I'm making. I'm not objecting to him being called, so we could use up the time we have today.
Let me ask, since he is here, if Mr. Chetty, do you, forgive me, Dr. Chetty, are you available tomorrow morning? You are? Well, that I think will then take care of your particular issue, Mr. Peterson. I understand it. Let me say straight away, I'm just slightly disappointed that you didn't express this earlier, because we could have made separate arrangements for that. Be that as it may, I think that it makes some sense for you to be able to reserve your cross-examination, if you have any, till tomorrow morning. Mr. Chetty, Dr. Chetty is available tomorrow morning, so that's what we'll do. What I will ask, though, is I think we were scheduled tomorrow morning to start at 10, were we? Or 10:30?
9:30 tomorrow and 11 on Wednesday.
Sorry, just
Somebody said 10?
I think we were 10.
Oh, better.
I think we were 10, but we will be now 9:30 to give you that extra bit of time. Is everybody else in a position to be able to ask Dr. Chetty such questions that they might feel is necessary today? Good. Well, that's what we will do then. You'll go last, and you can go tomorrow morning at 9:30. Dr. Chetty, would you mind then coming and taking the oath, please?
I, Glenn Chetty,
solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that the evidence
that the evidence
that I shall give
to
this commission in this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Right, please take a seat, and perhaps a bottle of water can be provided for. It is doctor, is it?
Yes.
Well, Dr. Chetty, thank you for coming. What's going to happen next is Miss Maharaj, who sits opposite you, is going to not summarise your statement, because we've not had it long enough to undertake that task. So what she's going to do is to read what we regard as being the salient aspects of your statement, or the paragraphs that represent the salient aspects. But the whole of your statement is available for everybody. It has already been made available for everybody. So please listen to those extracts that are read to us all. And then at the conclusion of that, Mr. Maharaj, who sits next to her, will ask you a few questions, all right, and we'll proceed in that way, reserving your final part of your evidence till tomorrow morning at 9:30. Thank you very much indeed. So, Ms. Maharaj, if you'd just help us with those extracts.
Thank you. Mr. Chetty's Dr. Chetty's witness statement is dated the 6th of January 2022, and it's at page 3232 of the supplemental witness statement bundle. At paragraph 1, he says, I have over 30 years' experience as a dive professional and have been involved in the diving industry in the Caribbean, Canada, England, and the United States of America. I am now a retired commercial diving instructor and Association of Diving Contractors Incorporated commercial diving supervisor. I have over 100 logged hours of commercial diving and over 3,000 hours as a scuba diver. I have trained and certified hundreds of persons in the areas of scuba diving, commercial diving, and underwater welding. And he sets out his certifications in that paragraph.
Thank you.
At paragraph 2, he states that he's also the Managing Director of Underwater Works Incorporated Limited. Between the years 2009 to 2018, UWIL, through me, offered training to persons who were desirous of becoming qualified commercial divers. Upon the completion of the course of study and required training at UWIL, the said persons were certified as commercial divers. At present, UWIL provides training and certification for persons who wish to acquire Professional Association of Diving Instructors, PADI, scuba diving certifications, and recreational diving. At paragraphs 5 to 10 of his witness statement, Dr. Chetty sets out his involvement on the 25th of February, 2022 with respect to the incident, and he states as follows. At around 45 hours on the 25th February, I received a call from Mr. Rolf Seals. Mr. Seals was one of my commercial diving students, and I knew that he worked for Heritage. He informed me that 4 divers were sucked into a pipeline operated by Paria. I asked who those divers were and heard 2 names I was familiar with as being my former students. These persons were Faisal Kurban and Rishi Nagasa. Both Mr. Kurban and Mr. Nagasa were trained as commercial divers by UWIL. I immediately inquired from Mr. Seals as to whether the divers were on scuba equipment, and he responded in the affirmative. I told Mr. Seals that the divers ought not to have used scuba equipment for commercial diving operations. I asked Mr. Seals as to the nature of his call. Mr. Seals informed me that he was contacting me with respect to my ROV, remotely operated vehicle, with underwater camera system, and asked whether I could utilize same for the purposes of finding the missing divers. I asked Mr. Seals what the diameter of the pipeline was, and upon learning same, I advised Mr. Seals that my ROV was 36 inches wide with cameras and other accessories and therefore would not fit into the pipeline. I further informed Mr. Seals that my ROV had only arrived 2 days prior and was not yet completely assembled. I further informed Mr. Seals that I remained available to help and assist with respect to the rescue of the divers. Mr. Seals responded, stating that he would let me know. I then told Mr. Seals that an air umbilical ought to be inserted into the pipeline as soon as possible in order to assist the trapped divers who may be able to reach seam. During the course of Mr. Seals' commercial diving training at UWIL, he would have received training with respect to the rescue of divers and penetration diving. I am unaware as to whether such training was utilized with respect to this incident. Further, as part of the commercial training received by Mr. Kurban and Mr. Nagasa at UWIL, they ought to have known that the use of scuba equipment for commercial diving operations is discouraged and inherently dangerous. We train our divers not to use scuba for such operations. At paragraphs 11 to 14 of his witness statement, Dr. Chetty sets out the responsibilities of the client and the contractor with respect to the tendering and evaluation for commercial diving operations. At paragraph 14, he says, a dive contractor must ensure the safety of its divers, and it is the first responder in the event of an emergency occurring during an operation. A dive contractor must always be ready to implement its emergency response plan. In such cases where further divers are required, the dive contractor must be able to identify such personnel and arrange for such personnel to attend on site as soon as possible. At paragraph 13, he states, the client is not expected to have the expertise to execute the required job. In evaluating a tender, the client is required to be assisted by technical personnel in the area and an independent qualified dive superintendent, supervisor, or if available, a diving client representative. No more than one diving superintendent is required for the purposes of evaluating the risk assessments, job safety analysis, and emergency response plans submitted by the contractor. The dive superintendent also verifies the contractor divers' current qualifications, divers' names, divers' current fit to dive diver's oxygen current certification, diver's logbooks, and the equipment that the contractor intends to use to complete the job safely. The dive superintendent must therefore have knowledge of the relevant diving standards, planning and execution of surface diving projects, including the responsibility for the safety and health of the dive team. She should have a diving supervisor qualification and be able to assist and advise other diving supervisors. 2, have a thorough knowledge of the system and relevant equipment, including related operational and emergency procedures. And 3, have sound knowledge of the diving management system and relevant manuals needed on site specific, on the job site specific for dive safety. At paragraph 14, he stated, the dive superintendent is required to attend the finalization of risk assessments and job safety analysis meetings of the contractor prior to the execution of the job and must be present during the execution of the job. The dive superintendent is specifically working on the client's behalf to ensure the contractor is adhering strictly to its duties. At paragraphs 15 to 30 of his witness statement, Dr. Chetty sets out in detail the reasons for his views that the job on the 25th of February ought to have been done utilizing commercial diving equipment and not scuba. At paragraph 15, he says, the job on the 25th February involved commercial diving with respect to repairs to an oil pipeline. The job required commercial divers utilizing commercial diving equipment and not scuba equipment. The contractor for this job was LMCS and the client was Paria. Paragraph 16, he stated, from my review of documents filed before this commission, Mr. Kurban and Mr. Nagasar were trained as commercial divers by UWIL and acquired commercial diver certification. At my request, searches were made of the membership register of the Professional Association of Diving Instructors by my son, Nikolai Chetty, who is a PADI master instructor. From those searches, he was able to confirm that Mr. Christopher Budram and Mr. Kazim Ali Jr. were certified as scuba divers by PADI. With respect to Yusuf Henry, Mr. Henry commenced training for PADI scuba certification in August 2021 and attended one session. He did not return thereafter and did not complete the course of training. Mr. Henry is not PADI certified and his name does not appear on the PADI membership register. On the issue of a possible rescue operation, Dr. Chetty gives the following evidence from paragraph 35 onwards. When the divers became trapped inside the pipeline at Boot 6, the best time to attempt a rescue would have been on 25th February with the use of commercial divers and commercial diving equipment. From my reading of the witness statements, a rescue operation was feasible and could have been undertaken on the 25th February. There were suitably qualified divers who could have served as members of the dive team once they were willing to do so, namely and in the following capacities. 1, Conan Bido, diver entering into the pipeline. 2, Corey McCrawford, in-water tender and standby diver. 3, Conrad Bido, topside standby diver. 4, Ronald Ramatar, topside dive tender. And 5, Michael Kurban, topside dive tender. Dive supervisors would have been available from the 2 dive vessels, Gulfstream Eagle and Waterworld, which were on site at the time. Mr. Ramatar could have served as an additional in-water tender and standby diver, and additional topside dive tenders could have been found from those on the dive vessels, namely Waterworld, operated by Subsea Global Solutions, LLC. These divers, even though they could not enter the water, could have assisted in the tendering of the divers and the setting up of the surface-supplied dive spread. There was also suitable commercial diving equipment available. There were 2 vessels with total surface-supplied diving equipment. I can attest that I have trained surface-supplied divers off the Gulfstream Eagle, a vessel operated by Offshore Technology Solutions Limited, and that the said vessel is equipped with surface-supplied equipment. I've also been on waterworks and have seen their surface supplied equipment, which would have been suitable. To the best of my knowledge, divers attached to the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard would not have been trained, qualified, or able to conduct penetration diving within a pipeline. Mr. Michael Kurban and Mr. Andrew Farah, at least by the time of the arrival of the other commercial divers, would not have been permitted to act as divers or dive supervisors with respect to the rescue operation. They would have been traumatized at the time, and penetration diving requires divers without added stress. Preventing Mr. Michael Kurban from entering the pipe using the dive hooker was correct. A dive hooker was not made for penetration diving, and the condition of the hooker topside compressor, together with its capacity to provide adequate air to specific depths to the diver within the pipe, was unknown at the time. A penetration dive must be continuously risk assessed. A risk assessment, including mitigation measures, ought not to have taken longer than 30 minutes, and it would have been possible to generate a plan within that time frame. The risk assessment through the job safety analysis is not meant to be overly detailed and should be kept to short sentences. The risk assessment would have included the personnel involved, the gas volume requirement for the air to be supplied, the lengths of continuous umbilical available, U.S. Navy dive tables, on-call hyperbaric facility, medical hyperbaric doctor on call, potential hazards within the pipeline, failure of the diving equipment, changes in water conditions within the pipeline, matters which would lead to the abandonment of the rescue. The plan to conduct a rescue in the event that the rescue diver became trapped or otherwise failed to keep continuous communication with the dive supervisor. And the entry, this would be feet first. The hindrance would be that the surface supplied diver will have to crawl backwards until he reaches the first diver. However, this helps as now he can grab the diver and attempt to get air to him or have topside pull both up to the surface face front. At paragraph 43, he states, it could have been deduced that there existed no unmovable blockages between the entrance of the pipeline and the location of the divers within the pipeline by the fact that Mr. Budram was able to make his way to the top of berth 6. Mr. Budram did so notwithstanding that he nursed injuries, and a suitable commercial diver would be certainly able to navigate the conditions within the pipeline. Mr. Kurban was also able to make his way a few feet past the elbow of the pipeline and make his return to the top of berth 6. At paragraph 47, he stated, the final call to perform the penetration dive would have been with the expert divers, and the call to abandon the dive once started would be with the rescue diver or the dive supervisor. Upon arriving at the location of each trap diver, the rescue diver would provide a breathing apparatus in the form of an extra umbilical with mask attached, or a small bailout bottle with a mask and regulator attached to the trap diver and retrieve the diver. The dive tenders would pull the rescue diver and trap diver out of the pipeline. This process would be repeated until all divers were rescued. In the event that the trap divers were unresponsive, the rescue diver has the call to attempt to remove him or abandon the dive. With respect to the possibility of a Delta P incident during the rescue, the best conditions to effect a rescue would have been on Friday or the early morning hours of Saturday morning. In any event, commercial divers are trained to deal with and mitigate against the possibility of a Delta P incident. He then refers to section 517 of the ADCI manual.
Before you move on, would you read paragraph 46, please?
Yes. In light of the information provided by Mr. Budram and Mr. Kurban, and the competency of the commercial divers available, awaiting the arrival of a camera boroscope or ROV, would have been wasting precious time on conditions which were already permissible for a rescue. The use of a ROV camera is a mitigating measure, but it is not compulsory. The rescue diver would have been equipped with a camera in any event as part of his umbilical and would have provided live video feed to the dive supervisor. And then at paragraphs 50 to 53, Dr. Chetty refers to the Code of Practice for Safety in Commercial Diving Operations, and he states as follows. I was a member of the committee appointed to review the Code of Practice for Safety in Commercial Diving Operations. This standard is outdated, inadequate, and not in line with the international standard on commercial diving. A new standard was drafted by the Trinidad and Tobago, being the Trinidad and Tobago Standard Commercial Diving Operations Requirements for Safety. I believe that had the draft standard been mandatory, the tragic deaths of Mr. Ali, Mr. Nagasar, Mr. Kurban, and Mr. Henry could have been avoided. Clause 5.1.12 of the draft standard would have prohibited the use of scuba for this operation and would have, in any event, required the divers to be tethered. Clause 5.1.1.3 of the draft standard would have prohibited the use of divers in commercial diving operations who was certified by a recreational diving agency. The ADCI manual recognized PADI as one such recreational agency. Dr. Chetty, do you agree with what I've just read out as representing a true and correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
It clearly isn't everything.
Yes.
Obviously, it's selected paragraphs.
Yeah, I saw so.
But as I indicated earlier, the entirety of your statement has been placed before everyone, and they have had an opportunity to consider it. So anybody who wants to ask you anything about any part of it, they're being allowed to do just that, all right? So Mr. Maharaj, now, who is counsel representing the Commission, is going to ask you some questions.
Good afternoon, Dr. Chetty.
Good afternoon.
I just want to ask you a few questions. You mentioned at paragraph 36 the name Conan Bedu. Do you know Conan Bedu?
No, I don't know him personally.
But you know of his
I know of him and of his diving capabilities.
And how would you describe him? What are his, as far as you're concerned, his qualifications and experience?
Excellent. I have. He is a certified commercial diver, and from what I understand, he did sat diving, and I have heard about him in the industry itself.
In the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Corey Mark Crawford is another name you mentioned. Do you know that person or of that person?
Yeah, I trained Corey many years ago, and he was very comfortable as a diver during the training process. And I know he went abroad and did some diving, I think it was in South Africa or somewhere. And yes, I know him as a competent diver as well.
And then the third name you mentioned was Conrad Bedu. What about him?
No, I don't know Conrad Bedu. I just, again, heard about him as well, that he was an ADCI certified diver.
ADCI. Ronald Ramuta.
I trained Ronald, and again, same like Corey, very competent divers. So I would recommend him to be there as part of that.
Michael Kurban.
Of course, I trained Michael as well. And he has always been a strong diver as well. So, yes.
So from your witness statement, am I to take it that if Paria had discussions with these persons who were on site or who were available, a rescue plan could have been devised?
Well, they would also have to have a supervisor there, not these guys alone. A diving supervisor, certified diving supervisor, would have to have been present for a dive plan to be completed.
For a dive plan?
Yes, sir.
And a dive supervisor, do you know whether there was any such person available?
Yes, what I have there as well too, in the two diving vessels that were present at the time, there were diving supervisors present. So they could have chatted with those guys there as well.
Who were they?
Paria, or whoever was trying to get the plan done.
No. Who were the two persons?
I don't know. I can't remember the name. I don't know if one was Paul. I can't remember the other one's name. But I know that they had divers, supervisors present.
Since you're coming back tomorrow, would you be able to look at the records and see
I can.
And so you could help us who are those two
Yeah,
names?
I can find out those two
Okay.
divers.
Now, you have been, you said that, well, let me put it this way. You are available in Trinidad to be retained to get advice in the diving industry in respect of diving.
Yeah, other companies have also asked me for advice.
For advice. Could you tell us some of the companies that have sought your advice?
In Trinidad?
Yes.
I know that Atlantic had called, but that was it at one point. Paria never did, LMCS never did. Smaller companies, one working for Heritage. The names I can't remember totally, but they had called me for advice, and that's new companies after Petrotrin had closed down. And there was another company working with Heritage as well. Okay. Most of these companies know me because I have students, who train for me, so they came to me.
I'm asking you that because the question I want to ask you is that if Paria had contacted you on the 25th of February, when this incident occurred, would you have been available to give advice or to be retained by Paria to give advice?
I would have given them advice.
Yeah.
Anyone who had called me would always get advice. Yes, sir.
In your witness statement at paragraph 45, you mentioned that Mr. Budram further indicated that he felt two well seams within the pipeline while navigating his way through. And you mentioned that this is a method of determining distance within the pipeline. Could you help us to explain that?
Yes, and I continue there with ship husbandry. Ship husbandry basically is working underneath ships where divers would clean the bottom of ships that don't have access easily to the surface. I'm talking about huge ships. And I have heard from divers. I have never worked underneath one of these ships, but speaking to a lot of these divers, and during the draft standards, we found out that divers who would lose their directions in which direction they can get out from under the ship would usually follow the seams, and they would know the distance or the direction in which to go. So when I heard about the seams in the pipeline, it was simple that you can work out, these divers are accustomed feeling these seams, and they could know the distance between, work it out, and the direction in which it goes.
Okay, at paragraph 1 of your witness statement, you gave us a list of companies or organizations which you were associated with. Could you tell us whether the Canadian Association of Diving Contractors, CADC, was any one of those associations you were associated with?
The DCBC, I had, that's the Diver Certification Board of Canada. I can't remember the exact year over here, but that's many years ago. When I was doing my dive supervisor course in Canada, I visited Working Divers with Gord Hay, that's the owner, and he introduced me to the standards, the DCBC standards, where I sat there on 2 occasions, learning about standards and also contributing. So at that point, I had learned a lot from the experts in the field as well.
Right. Okay. So you're no longer associated with that organization?
Oh, no.
At paragraph 49, in which you stated that, in which you dealt with the possibility of a Delta P incident, and you refer to certain literature on it. could you explain basically what that literature stated?
Right. What I quoted there was the ADCI manual. Now, we were certifying in Trinidad under the ADCI, that's the Association of Diving Contractors International. So our school would follow, of course, that manual itself. And we trained everything according to the manual. Delta P was listed as part of the manual, and all our students were introduced to this section, and we read about it and study it as well to understand what Delta P is.
So when you said...
I wonder if we could have the next page of his statement on the screen, please, because I think there you quote paragraph 5.17, I assume from the ADCI
Yes, sir.
manual to which you've been referring. And can we see there it set out what it is that you say it instructs?
That is the example of 5.517.2 examples of Delta P. That's what you're looking at?
No, I was looking at 5.17, an explanation, first of
Okay,
all, of
yes.
what differential pressure is, delta P. It's written there delta as opposed to using the Greek symbol delta, but delta P anyway. A significant number of fatalities in the diving industry involve a differential pressure, delta P situation. Delta P is particularly insidious hazard for several reasons and sets out what they are.
Yes, sir.
Rather than you reading them, let me. Delta P is invisible to a diver and strikes suddenly without warning.
Quite true.
You understand that?
Yes, sir.
Once entrapped by delta P, there is almost no way to escape.
Correct.
If the velocity profile of a hazard is such that at the periphery, the diver may approach without any perceptible increase in the water flow velocity, by the time the diver can feel the water flow velocity, it is already at a dangerous level.
Correct.
In other words, he may be sucked to it.
Yeah, quickly.
Yeah, without being able to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Even small forces may be compounded by factors such as the immobilization of limbs or the geometry of the structure surrounding the delta P hazard.
Correct.
And then the application of as little as 77 pounds of force on the torso can impair respiration and disrupt blood flow. A diver's chest, back, or abdomen trapped against a 9-inch by 9-inch opening with a delta P of only 1 psi, that is less than 2.5 feet of water ahead, would experience 81 pounds of force.
That is true.
So
Even
just so that we can picture that in our minds. A 9-inch opening, let's say a 9-inch pipe. What about this? Something like that, yes? Circle, around 9 inches. That size opening with a delta P of only 1 psi, 1 psi pressure. What is the average tire on a car pressure?
Oh, 26.
That sort of stuff, right. So we're just one.
That example, if I may come to you, is like we use that for even swimming pools.
Right.
Right, where the intake is at the bottom of the pool. There's been, that's a delta P situation right there that has trapped divers or people cleaning the pool if the covering isn't there. And how it works is that if the pump cuts off or whatever is happening with the pump, it sucks the person in. So that's only that size, and we're talking about a swimming pool.
There are people who've been known to die at the bottom of a swimming pool.
Correct.
Cleaning the filter at the bottom of the pool.
That's simple intake.
Right. And somebody with just a snorkel, perhaps going down 10 feet just to clean the bottom of the pool. Sucked to the surface, sucked to it, stuck there, can't move.
Yes.
A relatively small amount of pressure.
Correct.
That's how powerful it is.
Powerful delta P is.
And so you explain that, do you, to your students?
Oh yeah, and I also showed them the ADCI video, not only with the one with the crab, I think which everybody is speaking about, but there are a number of videos that ADCI has on delta P.
We've
and
seen
all my students run through that.
We've seen
it.
some.
Okay.
All right, lovely. Thank you, Mr. Mahoney.
And that explains, Dr. Chetty, if you look on the recommendations on 5.173,
Yes, sir.
you see it says, it is therefore important in your view, for if works have to be done, hazardous works, that steps are taken to identify potential Delta P situation.
Of course, and it's not hard to identify Delta
And
P.
if you notice at recommendations, attend a pre-job meeting to understand where the hazards may be. You see, that's one of the recommendations.
Yes, sir.
The third one, understand where the potential for Delta P may exist. And then 2 points down, make sure the diver and supervisor know how the piping and the valve systems work together.
Valve.
Valve system works together.
Yes, I mean, in that regard, the third head of that describes understand where potential for Delta P may exist. When dealing with pipelines, is there always a danger for Delta P?
Yes, always. Anytime you're around pipelines.
I mean, the little knowledge that I've gained in the time that I've been involved in this, it seems to me that it is almost a red flag for Delta P if there is pipes involved.
Correct.
And even if you're able to dismiss the prospect in a particular case, you have to consider it as an issue before dismissing it, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Yes.
I have no further questions.
I might have a couple myself first. Yes, I wanted to ask you about something, because it's not really reared its head very much in these hearings, but it seemed to me something as a layperson that might have been considered. If you turn to your paragraph 8 of your statement, please. You all right reading it on the screen, or would you prefer
I can
to
read
turn
that.
it?
It's
Yes,
comfortable.
all right. You say this, I further informed Mr. Seals that I remained available to help and assist with respect to the rescue of the divers. Mr. Seals responded stating that he would let me know, pausing there for a moment. Now, Mr. Seals knew you, you knew him because you trained him.
Yes.
Right. Were you called upon at any stage by Mr. Seals or anyone else to lend assistance?
No.
Right. You then went on to say this, I then told Mr. Seals that an air umbilical ought to be inserted into the pipeline as soon as possible in order to assist the trapped divers who may be able to reach sane.
Yes.
Right? Now, I'm envisaging you're putting a piece of pipe down there with a
Hose.
A hose with, I mean, you don't literally mean just an empty piece of hose, do you?
No.
Do you mean with breathing apparatus on the end?
No. What I told him to do was send that umbilical, which is the hose,
Yeah.
down into the pipe. Just send it down, and you open the air. It's something what we have in diving called a Nemo hose, a Nemo fathometer hose, which shows the depth. It always has air in it. Water would not get into it. So we can send that hose down and send it.
Is it pumping air out?
Yes.
Right, so unlike on that tank that we have in front with the mouthpiece, the regulator on the front, you see it on the floor
Yes,
there in
sir.
front of you, that's got a regulator on it that you have to put into your mouth and start breathing before it operates.
Yeah, but you have to hold that with your teeth.
You have to put it in your mouth, hold with your teeth and start breathing, right?
And pull.
I understand that. But what you're suggesting is putting down a hose which has got air continuously flowing out. You
Yeah.
don't have to breathe, you have to put it in your mouth, don't have to do anything.
Yeah,
right?
that's for the initial stage. Just send it down.
Just send it down, right.
yeah.
Did you have when you made that suggestion to Mr. Seals, did you first of all appreciate how far down the vertical it was before it went along in the horizontal, or did you have any idea about that?
No, I just say send it down.
Right. So your view at that stage, a very early stage, and
Yes.
ignorant perhaps of much of the facts, was, well, just send some air down there.
Yeah, just send it down. If guys are trapped anywhere underwater, anywhere, just send it down. One may hold it and put it in his mouth.
Well, somebody might, if they were down there, they might have actually grabbed hold of it.
Yeah, and these are two guys who I knew were commercial divers. So, of course, they're going to see umbilical in their face, you know.
At the time when you were making that suggestion, were you aware, for example, that there was any potential for air pockets in the pipe itself?
No.
So you had no idea whether there was any such air pockets in there, or where they might be, obviously.
No.
Right. But you thought that that might help, at least.
If you're going to send it down there, one might feel it, may see air bubbles coming out. I don't know. It was just a suggestion I made at that time.
No, I follow. I mean, to the layperson, it seems like a sensible thing to do. I just wondered whether or not there was any hazard involved in doing that.
I don't think there would have been a hazard.
You didn't envisage it. If somebody had suggested to you that there was a potential for a latent delta P to still exist in the pipeline, would sending a piece of tube with air in it like that affect that?
No, it wouldn't affect it. The only way that would have had a second delta P would occur is because it was going to be done through the habitat. You remember the habitat was now, it had air in the habitat again.
Pushing air down to the pipe.
If that had cut off again, the water would have started up a second time back into the pipe.
So removing the habitat was not a good idea.
Removing the habitat, but having it flooded with water, it's a whole lot of stuff that you had to take into consideration. Removing the habitat was a good idea. Yeah, it was a good idea. Just get rid of that habitat from there. Because it would have, if the divers, from what I understood, they would have had, the guys who were diving to try to get back into the pipe after Budram came out, it had air in there. What if that air, that compressor had stopped again? The water would have risen again and back into the pipe again. You understand what I'm saying?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Let me see if I can understand the position. You know, don't you, that that what caused this was a delta P?
Delta P.
Right. What preceded the delta P was the removal of plugs in a pipeline.
Correct.
Right? The removal of the plugs in the pipeline were being removed in circumstances where the habitat over the end of the pipeline was applying a certain amount of pressure to that pipe.
Correct.
Well, not to the contents of the pipe, obviously. It was applying that pressure within the habitat, pushing the water down.
Water down,
right.
Correct.
Once the plugs had been removed, or the first plug removed and the other one sucked in to the pipe and then stopped somewhere in it, once that had happened, the pressure from the habitat returned everything back to normal, even though there was no longer a plug at the surface. It was down the pipe somewhere. Created a sort of equilibrium, didn't it?
Yeah, but remove that air now. What was the job of the air? The air inside of the pipe was to keep the water down.
Yes.
Remove that for the second time. On a second occasion.
Yes.
Water would rise again.
No. I
I'm
follow
talking
that.
about the second delta P.
I do follow that. I do follow
Okay.
that. What I'm trying, and it's me, I'm sure, not understanding your answer, but the position in the pipe, whether there was a further chance of a second delta P or not, was at least stable at that moment in time.
Correct. It was stable at that time.
It's stable, right? And we've heard some evidence, and it seems to be the case, that something would have to happen to trigger a second delta P, even if that existed within the pipe, all right?
Yes,
Something would have to happen to affect that stable condition.
Correct.
Right? What I'm asking you, I suppose, is this, is that at the time when we have this stable condition, you've got whatever PSI there is within this habitat pushing down on the pipe and the contents of the pipe between where it's open and where the plug has ended up. So whatever distance that is, the pressure is pushing down on that end. Do you follow?
Yes.
So if I stop that pressure all of a sudden, if I take that pressure away and open the pipe to just the atmosphere above, surely that is a factor which might affect the equilibrium, the stabilization of the pipe.
Correct. Yes, sir.
So removing the habitat and depressurizing that force, downward force on the pipe, might have the effect of actually creating this second delta P if it existed.
Yeah, once you, yes.
So it's not a good idea to remove the habitat then, is it?
No, it wasn't going to be to remove it. It was already there. And looking at time, it could have been to work with the habitat while it was over the pipe. You're talking about the initial, before they removed the habitat.
Yes, I'm talking about, I mean, we've heard some evidence about the removal of this habitat and why it was thought appropriate to do so. The pump might break down or whatever it might be.
Correct, same thing.
I get all of that.
Right, good.
But I'm simply asking the question, you as the expert in the field can help me understand that the removal of that habitat might of itself have created that secondary delta P if one existed within the pipeline.
Yes.
Because you're taking one of the forces that exists away, aren't you? There is, whatever the PSI is, it doesn't matter for our purpose of our argument, but if there's a force, a downward force on the open end of the pipe, and you stop that, that changes the dynamic, doesn't it?
Anything that would affect the dynamics here could cause a delta P.
So the best thing to do, from what I can see at the moment, is to keep it as it is.
Yes.
Is that not right?
That's fine. Yeah, we could. Yeah.
I look to my colleague, Mr. Wilson, to disagree with me if I've got it wrong. But I think that's my way of thinking about the matter. Yes. Yeah. All right. Equally, would you agree that because we know this U-bend at the other end, at berth 5, had a cap, a sealed cap on it, right, sealing it off at that end, that also provided for a degree of the stabilization, didn't it, of the existing pipe?
Yes.
Right? So if I open that end, it's not such a good idea either, is it?
No. That has to stay on.
So the net result is both things that were actually done might have actually made it worse rather than better. Because we know that that cap was taken off eventually, but before that, the habitat was removed. A new piece of pipe put on.
Installed.
So that it went above the water line. That was fitted on. That was what was originally going to be done had this tragedy not occurred. So they put this new pipe on and then took the habitat away.
Yeah, and then the water would have equalized at that part. And then any air pockets in the pipe could have moved.
In other words, anybody who was breathing air in an air pocket inside the pipe might have lost that air.
Correct. It would have,
and drowned.
Yeah. Once you shifted anything there.
Well, that's what I thought. That's right, yeah. All right, look, thank you very much for that. Let me just check if there's anything else I wanted to ask you. Oh, yes. Paragraph 13 of your statement, if we can pull that up, please. Thank you. Yes, here you're saying this. The client is not expected to have the expertise to execute the required job. Now, the client here is Paria, isn't it? That's who you're talking about.
Yes, sir.
Right. So they're not expected, as they've been at pains to make clear during the course of this inquiry, to be able to carry out the work themselves or even have a deep understanding of the work. And their case is really that, look, we employ these experts, LMCS, to do the job because they're the ones who are expert in the field. Do you follow?
Correct.
So, and you seem to agree with that.
Yeah,
right?
I agree with that.
So I want to ask you in the next bit, it says, in evaluating a tender, the client is required to be assisted by technical personnel in the area and an independent qualified dive superintendent or, if available, a diving client representative. Now, pausing there, is what you're saying about that given that Paria don't have the expertise themselves, that what they should do, or the prudent thing to do, would be to employ somebody independent to do that job for them, the assessment. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that, and that's why it's not just about Paria, it's about all clients who get involved with the diving business.
No, I follow that. But I mean, I'm concerned with this case, right?
Yeah. In this case, yes, must, and they should have had someone.
Given that they are saying their case is, this is expert work, which we do not know anything. It's not what we do. We know nothing about this. Experts are employed to do the job.
Correct.
And in effect, they've been saying that the expert must police themselves, all right? That's what they're saying.
When you say police themselves?
Well, in that they are to make the risk assessments and then judge whether that risk assessment is enough themselves, because Paria don't have the expertise to do it.
And be on the site 24 hours per se. Yeah.
Supervise it all themselves, do it all themselves,
Correct.
all right? But what I think you're saying here is that in the evaluating the tender, the client, that is Paria, should actually get somebody, because they can't do it, get somebody else to do it.
Correct.
The assessing. Because you go on to say no more than one diving superintendent is required for the purposes of evaluating the risk assessment, job safety analysis and emergency response plan, right? Am I to understand that what you're saying is, look, the prudent and sensible thing here is for Paria, given their limited knowledge of this expert work, to employ someone else to look at what LMCS were going to do and say, well, yeah, your risk assessments work, your job safety analysis is good, and your emergency response plan is good.
Correct.
We're fine with that.
That's what they needed.
To say, no, they're not. Right?
And stop the job immediately.
Yes, exactly. So they would look at those things, make an assessment of, judge what they've done, what LMCS have done, and then say, yes, it's good or no, it isn't, and then be on site to be the, as it were, the eyes for the client.
Correct.
Obviously, that involves expense, doesn't it?
Well, yes.
All right. You finished that off in your paragraph 14. At the end of paragraph 14, you say the dive superintendent, this is this independent person, is specifically working on the client's behalf, on Paria's behalf, to ensure the contractor is adhering strictly to its duties.
Correct.
Gotcha. All right. Would you be kind enough to put up, please, page 12 of the 26, or 3243? Do you see there, you've given some illustration of the kind of headgear that the divers ought to have been wearing, as I understand it, whilst working inside the habitat?
Yes.
And you give these examples. This is figure 1. This is something called a Kirby Morgan Surface Supplied MOD 1 full-face diving mask. You see that?
Yes, sir.
Look like a spaceman or something.
Correct.
That is a much lighter arrangement than the yellow one that my learner.
This is just about 2 pounds.
Weighs 2 pounds.
Yeah, about that.
So it's something you can work with.
Yeah. This is what you need to use in the habitat.
Right. Ought to have been using.
Ought to have been using.
So anybody in that habitat carrying out this sort of work ought to have been wearing something like that. I think there's another one, a Kirby Morgan band mask.
The band mask, yeah, but that's a little heavier. That's about 12 pounds.
That's quite a bit heavier, is it?
Yeah, but for these guys who work in there, I don't think it'll be a problem for them. But those are about the lightest ones, and what is
Well,
recommended.
I'm just thinking about it, you know. I mean, wearing 12 pounds on your head, bending down, looking into a pipe, might not be the most comfortable position
That's
to
why I
be in for
recommended
very
this
long,
one.
is it? You might be able to do it for 10 minutes or even half an hour.
Very true.
But I mean, carrying 12-pound additional weight on your head bending forward is...
But that's why I recommended this one. And
This one.
We have a lot of light ones, about 3-4 pounds as well, the
Right.
EXO band mask. It's not like if you're limited to just one. There's a wide range of full-face surface
this is
supply
just an
diving
example.
masks. This is just
I
one.
get it, it's just an
Yeah.
example. All right. All right. But anyway, that would provide some sort of protection.
Of course.
Yeah. Next, can I ask you this? If you go to figure 2, please. That's it. Yeah, this is some sort of a harness that can be worn. I think.
This is a 6-point.
Where is it? This is a what?
A 6-point harness.
Right. I'm not going to try it on before anybody says anything. All right? But this is the sort of thing, is it?
Yes. Yes.
That's
No,
the
I understand,
top.
yeah.
Ah, right, okay, yeah. So you climb into
But
it,
the
this
thing
either
that-
side of your
yeah, but
buttocks, as it were.
It's not
yeah.
just that alone. You have to have a place in the back of it like this one. If you look at the pit here, you will see that there's a hard piece in the back of it
Right.
where
Across
the
here.
bailout bottle is attached to this. But the divers in the habitat can use this and have a small bailout bottle with them.
So something like that,
That's fine.
if the divers were wearing something like that, clipped on
Yeah.
to the habitat?
Not the habitat, they'll be clipped onto the surface. The umbilical will be running to their hip, then to the hat, but the other part of it will be attached to the surface.
Right, so basically what they'd be wearing a hat like we see in what we've
Right.
just been looking at.
And the D-ring to the side.
Just a minute, they'd be wearing a wetsuit,
Yes, wetsuit,
then this over the top of the wetsuit,
correct.
right? Arms through here,
Yes,
yes, and then legs through that part,
correct.
buckled up at the front
Yes,
of this, yes? And then there'd be some sort of tether, would they, on these?
on the sides, yeah.
On these,
Yes.
yes? What, a kind of, just the umbilical or something separate?
No, but the entire umbilical will be hooked with a carabiner on that.
On here,
Yeah, on that.
So it would
and
go
then
from
the
here
air would run
round
to the hat.
into the person's mouth.
Well, the hat.
What, connected
Yeah.
to the hat, yes. All right. And that would all be connected to the surface.
Correct.
So if there had been the kind of delta P we're talking about, yes, and they were sucked into the, or attempted to be sucked into the pipe, they would be connected to the surface by that.
Yeah, the
that hold
umbilical would be comprising of a strength member, not a piece of rope or such, but it's a strength member. And that is all wrapped around the umbilical, like the next photo you would see lower down. And
Yes,
that
the next-
strength
the
member
next picture,
ends here.
please. Just scroll to the next page.
Right,
Yes.
that is what you
That's
call an
umbilical's
umbilical.
coiled up, isn't it?
Yes, so that's 3 or 4 umbilicals there. One end is connected to the surface, to the air manifold system, which sends air to the diver. The strength member, which is like a rope then, a strong rope, is connected to the barge.
Made of rope or metal?
Rope.
Rope.
Everything is made of, everything there is, except for the rope, right? And everything is hose. And the communication systems and all that, and the video as well. The strength member, which is a rope, which is also wrapped in that strength member is attached to the barge or to the ship or somewhere onto the boat itself. Very short, not all long, but just short. So if it's pulled, the tender who is holding the other end, if it slips out of his hands, like a delta P, it's going to slip out of his hands.
There's no way he's going to hold it, no.
Right. The other end is attached to the boat. So that they may be sucked in, they may be banged up, but at least, we can
I
find them.
mean, even if it ripped itself off the cleat on the boat, it would still have an umbilical that would go into the pipe
Of
with
course,
the
yeah.
person.
Yeah. Those umbilicals are pretty long, 300 feet, maybe 4, 5.
Right. 300 feet.
Yeah.
All right. And your view is that when you're carrying out that kind of work, that is how you should be tethered inside the.
And one important thing about the umbilical is that the umbilical must never be joined.
Never be joined?
Never be joined.
What do you mean?
What I mean by joined is that people like to connect umbilicals.
Yes.
On some of my, where I was asked to visit some of these companies, I have seen they have joined umbilicals, and that is something that is frowned upon by standards. What happened, 2 things happen, is that on force, that joining could pull.
Yeah.
So that's the air brake right here, and you will not get air
Down, yeah.
down here. The second one is that the gas volume that is coming from the surface, there's a slight restriction at that point where it is joined. So the amount of air that's going to the diver will be a little less.
Right. I mean, obviously, that would be in the sort of conditions where you're carrying out the work. There might be justification, can I suggest, if it's right, that you might want to join them if you were trying to effect a rescue that needed more than 300 feet.
No, I will find an umbilical.
Sorry?
I will look for an umbilical that's longer than 300 feet.
Yes,
I would
but
not
if
be
it was
comfortable
If
with
it was in
joining.
Jamaica, that wouldn't be much use to you in an emergency situation, would it?
And where?
If
Sorry.
the longer one was in Jamaica rather than nearby.
Oh, no, there are companies here in Trinidad that have longer ones as well.
They do?
Yeah.
All right, good. All right, super. All right, thank you very much. Let me just, just make sure I haven't got anything else to ask you. I do. Yes. Paragraph 46, please. Yes, you address an issue that has been an issue we've been concerned with in this inquiry. In the light of the information provided by Mr. Boudram and Mr. Michael Kurban, and the competency of the commercial divers available, awaiting the arrival of a camera, boroscope, or ROV would have been wasting precious time on conditions which were already permissible for a rescue. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Do I take it from that what you are doing is to say we have a timeline to save these people?
Correct.
And every hour that passes, that timeline is more likely to expire and therefore they will be dead.
Correct.
And so it was important, whilst it would be a really good idea to have a camera look at the inside of the pipe, if that took too long, then you have to do away with that and make an assessment without it.
Correct, because as I said, after that, the diver will have a camera on his head.
Indeed. And if he had met, as I think Mr. Ramadan suggested, a crocodile coming in the other direction, you would have been able to see it. I know it's a facetious question, but since he asked it in that way, I put it in the same way, all right? I mean, the reality is, what I'm suggesting is that once you're down, the person who's got this on his head, or wherever it is he's looking, you'll be able to see.
No, yes, but what is more important for that statement would be the supervisor would see a lot better sometimes than the diver himself. The camera is focused here on his head, right? Some of them have it here, but most of them have it here.
Pointing in
right,
which direction?
In full direction of him. It will have light and camera in one. The supervisors sitting there would be able to see a lot, sometimes more than what the diver himself
can see with his eyes, with the protector, all the other gear around his
Correct.
head. Right.
So that's basically there for the supervisor
and so
to
the
see.
supervisor could be telling him there's a crocodile coming, if that's what you want to say.
Or there's someone in front of you, or
right.
there's something, yeah.
Yes, yes. So, and they're in communication with each other.
At all the times, especially for a dive like this, yes.
So if either vision or oral, auditory communication were lost, you could have a plan for removing the diver immediately.
Yeah, all commercial divers follow within the standard or the dive manual itself that talks about the U.S. Navy signals, where we pull. So we have one signal will mean something, two, and we just recap it before we dive. So we have the out of loss of communication signals. Right.
So if you lost vision and audio, you'd be able to say, right, give him 2 pulls or 1 pull or whatever it is.
It's more than 4 pulls. You will be panicking, so you're going to pull a lot, and that's enough to take you out.
Get me out. Yeah. Right. I think that's all I need to ask you, Doctor. Yes, it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson, I think has a question.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chetty.
Yes,
I just want to go back to figure 3, where you were showing the different types of hats, and I want to ask you something for clarification.
Figure 3?
Yeah, with the different...
umbilicals.
That's umbilical. Well, just higher up.
Which
with the hats. With the
you're looking at the masks, are you?
That's what.
Yeah, this is, the two of those are
Right.
figure one. Right?
Just higher up, sorry, figure.
The other way,
don't
go the
forget.
other way, the other way, the other way, that's,
Up to the hats, the face, past
there we
that,
go.
right straight to the top of the,
That's
that one. I just heard you indicate that this is the type of mask. I understand it's an example that you'll be expecting the divers to work to in the habitat. Upon demonstrating the harness and with your recommendation that this is supposed to be done with surface applied air, just for the clarification, my clarification, once you dive in with hard hat and stuff, you get to the habitat. If you could walk me through that, the process that a diver would go from hard hat to this.
No hard hat. We don't use, I would never recommend that heavy 35 pounds hard hat to be used even from the surface to the habitat.
Okay.
That's,
so,
no, you
problem.
don't need to do that. This is the hat that you stay on at
so
all
you
times.
use this hat to dive
From
straight to the habitat?
Yeah, from the entrance
Okay,
to the
that's,
water.
that's
yeah.
a clarification.
Yeah, I
So
won't
you
use
would
that hard
go,
hat. You can't, no, there's no way to take off that hard hat by yourself.
well, that's what I was
Right,
going with.
that's basically impossible to do.
No, understood.
We usually have tenders, so
Yeah.
in the habitat, there's no one to help you there.
The reason why I was asking, and that's why I wanted the clarification, we heard testimony earlier that surface applied diving to known standard. No, not this hat really, but about 27.
Oh, you have a
yeah.
hat here.
Yes. But I'm not
That's a
making reference to that. Yeah, 27, all 27. Yeah. Earlier we heard that, you know, because we dive into, well, not we, there's a dive executed to a standard, surface applied, diver gets to the habitat, de-rigs, and then he would use one of those hats, band masks to execute the job. So why I wanted clarity for that is with the Delta P incident, if he de-rigged, and that was set up in the habitat for use of the diver. Once he gets into the habitat, the probability that he might be attached to the surface is not.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
We have never thought about any time to any of our students to ever take off their equipment underwater.
Yeah.
So that's why we use that hat from the time you leave the surface, you keep it on until the time you exit.
Understood. Thank you for that clarification. All right. Right.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I had real trouble with the idea of somebody wearing this thing and having to take it off inside that. Right, good. Well, that's very helpful. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Right, questions from others, please. We will proceed until 5 o'clock and then we'll stop. So first of all, hands up, those who want to ask a question. Right, good. I know Mr. Peterson does. All right, so we'll start with Miss Alfonso, please, from the union.
Pardon?
Yes.
Yes.
You've arranged for this witness
Yes.
to be called, so
Yes.
I mean, all witnesses are our witnesses, and this is a witness tendered as an expert rather than anything else, even though he had some minor connection on the day. We've taken a position hitherto that those who are most closely associated with the witness should have the opportunity to go last. That's the position I've adopted. So I'm perfectly content for you to go now, but you're not going to get a second bite of the cherry. So if you want to wait until after Mr. Peterson has asked questions tomorrow, you are more than welcome to wait until then.
I was so, like Pavlov's dogs, anxious to put my hand up at a very early stage. But yes,
Very wise,
Mr. Chairman.
very wise.
I'm a well-trained Pavlov dog.
Do you wish to go last?
I will go last, Mr. Chairman. But
Then
I said
I
I
will-
was so anxious to make sure I did not miss my
Then I will
turn.
permit that, and I appreciate Mr. Peterson pointing it out to me. So yes, you will go last.
always here to help the commission to get it
Well,
right.
I gathered that much, and I'm grateful. Thank you, Mr. Peterson. So, Mr. Ramadar, do I see you, Mr. Pegas, also wanting to ask some questions?
Well, not this afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My issue is very simple and narrow. This witness has referenced certain conversations with a witness that I placed before the commission in the person of Mr. Rolf Seals.
Yes.
Now, I had no instructions from Mr. Rolf Seals with respect to this witness's interaction with him. So I'm simply asking for the opportunity to confirm that. And if there is a need for me to put anything to him, I would ask to do so tomorrow morning.
Right. Well, first of all, I understand your position. I did, again, I reiterate, point this out first thing this morning, asking everybody to look at the statement during the course of the day. And I do appreciate he mentions Mr. Seals on a number of occasions. I'm not sure how vital it is, but there is that content there. I rather suggest, or I think the likelihood is that we're unlikely to get to you before 5 o'clock today in any event. So, Mr. Ramadan, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And Dr. Chetty, I understand you're also a lawyer.
Yes, sir.
Could you help us a little bit? From your understanding of the circumstances from the accident around 3 o'clock to a survivor exiting the environment around 5:30, what level of anxiety would you have had to entertain a rescue plan?
Could you just say it again? Sorry, I
Of
just
course.
lost you there a sec.
Yes.
Okay.
Knowing what you do today, that the incident occurred around 3 o'clock, and that there was a survivor coming out of the pipe around 5:30 thereabouts, what level of anxiety or urgency would you have assumed would have been required to entertain a rescue effort?
Very high anxiety.
Yes. And anxiety transforms itself into time frames, isn't it?
In that case, yes, sir.
Yes. You would not have considered, as a true professional, hours if it could be avoided and be done in a shorter period of time, isn't it?
Once it can be done safely, yes, sir.
Yes.
Shortly.
And to ensure that you could expand the period of survivability, you have told us here today that you had suggested that a hose, and I use that term loosely, an umbilical, be placed into the pipe for the purpose of admitting air, so that if divers were closer by, they could benefit from that and extend their lives, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Sitting as you are today, do you know whether any such effort was made?
No, sir, I don't know.
Would it surprise you to learn from all the evidence we've heard so far that no such effort was made?
I made a suggestion, so I don't
Yeah.
know.
But was it a loose suggestion or one for sustenance of life?
Well, as an instructor, when I hear something like that immediately, I mean, there's a lot of textbooks in my head.
Yeah.
I immediately would come up with a suggestion, not knowing full details. Send air to the person.
Of course.
That's just natural.
Well, very early on in the inquiry, we actually had asked Mr. Way, one of the incident management team members, whether they even considered that. And till this day, we've heard no witness say that they did entertain it, first of all, and two, act upon it to put a sustenance in terms of air into the pipe.
It's a simple thing.
Simple thing, that's what I thought. Now, to be clear, you may have it in your statement, but for the benefit of many others, are you being paid for the evidence you give today?
No, sir.
Of course not. Do you expect to be retained by Paria into the future?
No.
No. Have you been retained by Paria in the past?
No, sir, I've never, no.
No. So you consider your evidence today? No, this is no trick, I'm telling you.
Oh, okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Right. You consider the evidence that you've come to give today is that of a professional giving the best he could in all of the circumstances that have been made available to you.
Yeah, not only for the Paria incident, for the Trinidad and Tobago as well.
You see, we need more of that in this country. Okay? So that they have...
Those speeches.
Oh, that's Wednesday, is it?
That's,
Thank you.
it
Yes.
is. Don't forget it. And I might remove it on the basis you've already made it.
So, let's see now. you have come as a patriot to give the best information that you could share with us moving forward to ensure that if something like this should recur, what is the best practice we should
Correct.
adopt? Yes. Now, as you've told us already, the anxiety for the rescue in your mind should have been quite high. Would you sacrifice the need for a paper-written risk assessment and for a paper-written or digitally prepared dive plan? Would you sacrifice that?
As I wrote there, digitally, no. Paper, yes. But it wouldn't take long to do.
There you go. And if persons were offering information but on the scene, in the midst of all that anxiety, would it be reasonable to expect, in that light, you're telling people things that you need to do, get it done, and they're ignoring you until you put it in writing? Would that be a reasonable position to take from a position of authority to say no, put it in writing? Or
the only thing that would be done there in writing would have been a dive plan, which, as I said before, it could be done in less than 30 minutes. And that is very quick to do. I mean, you have the experts there already.
There you go. Now, are you aware, as you are today, of the equipment that was made available that evening by many others like yourself who came there to help? Do you know the nature and quality of the equipment that was brought to bear on a possible rescue?
OTSL boat, I had worked on that boat before, training divers through that boat. They were full of equipment, everything possible that they would have, even a chamber. I have been on, well, I'm going to say Miami divers because that's what I'm accustomed to. And they have equipment as well, surface supply equipment as well, full equipment. And a rescue could have been used, could have been attempted as such using that equipment.
And in terms of there was a little bit of a rush from my friends when it was spoken about the length of the umbilical, and it was not advisable to join it. What was the length of the umbilicals, as far as you're aware, that would have been available that evening or into the night of the 25th of February?
I can't remember exactly now the length of umbilical that would have been on the boats as such. Right? However, what is important is not so much the length of the umbilical. What was important was the U.S. Navy dive manual stated that you have to have time in which a diver have to go into that pipe.
Right.
And what I'm talking about here is decompression, non-decompression time. So you're going down 60 feet. The U.S. Navy dive table is very clear that if you're at 60 feet, you go to the next one, which is 70 feet, and checking the time that you stay underwater, which allows you 48 minutes.
Right.
So a diver could only go down there up to 48 minutes. That's returning,
Yes.
Right? Staying down and coming back to the surface without getting nitrogen, excess nitrogen in his system. So that gives you 60 feet, which is like about, in this situation where he's going feet first, it's going to take about 5 minutes. By the time he reaches the bend here, then he has about another couple of minutes or even longer at that point to turn. So that gives you now, remember half the time we're dealing with her because he has to come back up.
Of course, I get that.
Just about 15 to 20 minutes into the pipe now to search for anyone that's there.
Beautiful.
So again, so he has umbilical. The umbilical is not the issue.
I appreciate that.
Right.
But the distance into the pipe is?
Yes.
Right. So in terms, knowing what you do, that Christopher Boudram had articulated that he had counted 2 well seams. And we've learned from many others that a length of pipe is
40.
Approximately 40 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes, sir.
So we're looking at 80 feet, 120 feet maximum. Is that an insurmountable opposition to a rescue? Having regard to the fact that you have your umbilical, you have divers, and you have other equipment that may be required.
No, it's not insurmountable as such as you put it. It's just the other factors that you will have. Again, as I said, the amount of air available, the skill of the divers available. But attempt could have been made at that point because all the guys were there. So, and the umbilical was there. The supervisors were there to bring them back safely out of the pipe.
Thank you. So we had personnel, adequate personnel, from what you know.
Yes, sir.
Adequate equipment.
Yes, sir.
we had unlimited air in terms of the umbilicals,
Correct.
and nobody called you back. Nobody called you. Said Mr. Seal said he'll call you back.
Well, I just told him I'm always available for anything, which it's normal. I mean,
And what did he respond to you?
I'll call you back or something like that. Yeah,
And
I'll
did
get back to you.
Yeah. Did anybody call you back, get back to you?
No, sir.
You appreciate that you had a viable position in terms of endeavoring a rescue?
Yes. In fact, what I also added, if I may.
Yes, of course.
My son had visited Michael there at the scene outside Paria.
Oh.
And my son is an instructor, master instructor, scuba diver. So he had visited them and chatted with them. And I told him over the phone, I said, tell them if they need me at any point for anything, let me know. And I remember speaking to Michael very quickly about a couple of things, but I knew that the situation that they were in, so I didn't want us to take too long. But I told him, I said, if you want need me for anything, let me know.
Yeah.
But I'm not coming by the gate there.
No. And certainly this would have been sometime after.
That would have been on
the Saturday?
when they gathered by the gate. I can't remember.
It wouldn't have been the same night.
No.
No. Thank you very much. And you do know that there were Coast Guards men armed there on site.
I don't know about the arm. I don't know anything about that. Yeah. Nobody told me about that. I know about it after.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to tell you it's not yet 5, and I'm done. Thank you.
Yes, you catch me out, I'm afraid, Mr. Ramadan. All right. Are you in a position, Ms. Prasad Maharaj, to ask your questions now?
I am, please.
Please do.
Good afternoon. The name is Kamini Prasad Maharaj, and I represent LMCS Limited. I'd like to refer you to the figure 1, which is on screen. Yes.
Yes, sir.
With the Kirby Morgan surface supply. My question to you is, this is in relation, a PPE in relation to dive-in operations and work conducted within the chamber. That's what your evidence
Within the
is.
habitat, yes.
All right. The question is, in respect of works that are to be conducted within the chamber, there are to be hot works at some point in time within the chamber. That's welding. Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Would there be need for additional apparels or segments to this this picture that we're looking at, this mask?
Yes, there would be.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that would necessarily add weight
No.
and bulk? Well,
No.
Could you explain?
Okay, let me explain.
Yes.
All right. First of all, no underwater welding jobs or any kind of burning, cutting or anything must be done on scuba. So it's going to be on surface supply with a mask like that. But if you could, I'll come back to this one, but let me go up to the other one, if you don't mind, to go up to the other figure. Right, this one, there is a connection by Kirby Morgan. I'm supposing it will fit the first one as well. But we have used this mask where there's a connection. You see those holes on top there along the band, the silver part? There are screws that can go in there. And we are onto the side where we attach a welding mask to it. Just a thin welding piece of equipment, which can raise to do work and then back down to weld and cut. And I'm supposing that with Kirby Morgan, they would also have an attachment, or you can make an attachment for that one on top.
And this is the mass that is 12 pounds?
This one is 12, the other one is only 2 pounds.
And just to confirm, the one that is just 2 pounds wouldn't be one that we can use for welding or any kind of...
Yes, what I'm saying is that you can attach the visors to that. There is no big deal to that.
To this very one that is 2 pounds?
Yeah, we can make it work. We have done it before.
And it would be a safe system of work for the person operating hot works?
Yeah, because you just raise it off.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at material and that kind of thing, so that's what I'm asking you.
Oh, the material meaning the rubber?
Because what I'm thinking, and I'm not a welder, I'm not a diver, but what I'm thinking is that you would need an apparel or that protects you. That's what the PPE
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
What you see with this one, it's fitted close to you. Yeah. And if you know some welders, what they have is the welding mask, the one that you put over your face. That could have gone on that, over your head, and that will protect your entire face.
Right. And so in any event, in addition to this, there is something additional that the workers would have had to had in order to be safely performing their work within the chamber.
Welding work or
Welding
cutting work,
works,
if not,
condition-
normal.
Right. All right. In relation to diving qualifications,
Yes, ma'am.
does a commercial diver necessarily have to be a PADI certified diver? First,
In my school, what I do, I recommend that all persons who come to us to do commercial diving should be scuba certified. Not PADI as such only, but scuba. PADI is not the
Scuba,
only,
right,
but scuba
scuba.
certified. And the reason for that being is that it gives them an opportunity to see if, hey, am I going to spend this large amount of money for something I don't like? So I get them involved in scuba, get them diving at 60, 70 feet of depth, put them into night diving as well, all that sort of thing. And then we move them on to commercial.
all right. At your paragraph 13, if you can be taken to it, you said that you verified in relation to Mr. Henry
Yes, ma'am.
that he had not been certified?
Yes.
All right. So my instructions are is that he was in fact PADI certified and had, as you mentioned, that he had one session of training. Yeah, but the one session of training you're referring to is in relation to scuba, not so?
Yeah, well,
PADI.
since you asked that question, if I may, I may tell you this part. I don't know what your instructions are.
Yeah.
But Mr. Kazim-Ali called me sometimes after the incident and asked me if I had Yusuf's certification card. I told him, no, Yusuf never trained with me. Right? So, and then I called my son, because usually I'll call him for that. And he said he remembered Yusuf, and he came to the pool one time, just one time. So I have him check PADI to see what certification, if he went somewhere else. So I told him, before you check and see if you see Budram. He found Budram. I said, check and see if you see Junior Kazim-Ali's son. He said, yes, he saw that as well. Check on the same thing and see if you saw Yusuf. And I gave him the full name. He said, no, it is not there. So I don't know. I could only say what PADI itself is showing on their website.
All right. So my instructions are that he was being certified for commercial diving and was already certified for PADI diving.
I don't understand that. I really don't understand what does that mean. I don't understand what you're saying. Where would he get commercial certification?
Well, hang
No,
on.
he hadn't been commercially.
Just a minute. We're going to have a debate about it. Either he is PADI certified or he's not. If he is, let's have a
We
look
will
at the
get that,
certificate. All right?
certainly.
If he was going through a training process thereafter and hadn't quite completed any commercial training, you could let us have that as well.
Certainly,
Right?
please.
There's little point in us going back
Certainly,
and forth, right?
certainly. In relation to the evidence that Mr. Chairman took you through for the removal of the hyperbaric chamber, and there being a possibility of an occurrence of a second delta P or the conditions changing within the pipeline, I would like to walk you through the rationale that was provided by LMCS in relation to the process there. I understand what your evidence is, but I would like to put to you what it is that, right. So as I understand it, the risers at the riser that was now going to be, that had already been cut, the new section was installed, thereby taking it out of the water. Yes?
Yes.
All right. And the proposal was to have that inserted, the chamber removed, and then the blank removed at berth number 5.
Correct.
Yes, you follow me?
Yes, I follow you.
That
No.
wasn't the proposal.
Sorry?
That is not the evidence. The evidence is, first of all, an application was made by Mr. Ali to have, in consultation with the IMT,
Yes.
to put the riser on,
Yes.
and thereby removing the habitat, because there was a concern that if the compressor that was providing the air inside the habitat packed up, that the water would then rush into the existing pipe.
That was
the application. There was a completely separate application for removing the blank at berth 5, which was to do with whether or not they could hear knocking at that. They're not connected.
Well, as I understand it, I stand corrected, but as I understand the evidence from Mr. Ali himself, that was his proposal to the IMT2, Mr. Pipe, I think it was.
I don't understand it that way. I'm happy to be corrected, but I had understood they to be two separate matters. And indeed, the IMT went ahead with the first one, that is to remove the habitat and put the extension pipe on. And it was many hours before they removed the blank.
So the actual execution of what that proposal wasn't what the actual proposal that Mr. Ali had to the...
well, either way, it wasn't going to be simultaneous, was it?
No. It wouldn't.
Whichever way you did it, whether there was hours in between the two or not, there had to come a point in time when one was done and then the other.
Certainly.
So why don't we address it that way, and then we can worry about the exact way in which Mr. Ali put it later on. Certainly.
So my question to you was that in relation to the riser being out of the water on both ends and it being isolated from any other connection, whether or not the pressure within, and I understand what you said earlier, but whether or not there was a second violent delta P possibility within the pipeline.
I'm afraid I don't understand.
I don't understand.
I mean, are you saying that all of a sudden they just go like that, remove them in one instant, or
no?
Because whichever way you do it, you're going to have to do one then the other.
Certainly.
Right? So, which one do you want to take first?
We'll insert in the riser at berth 6.
Right.
Right. So we would have to insert the riser, which was done on the night of the 25th. Yes?
Yes.
Right. Now, within the pipeline, there were air pockets, correct?
Yes, sir.
Right. The question is in relation to the movement or the possibility of a second, this is the first point, right? A second delta P occurring at that point in time.
By putting the riser up there may not even interfere with it, most likely would not affect the air pockets or anything on that.
It would not have.
I don't see that as being affecting anything because you're just adding the riser.
Right. And that would have been taking it out.
Yeah.
When the riser is connected then and the compressor is shut down at that point in time, because now it's one continuous air line, would then that have any effect on that pipeline integrity within, whatever's that integrity within that pipeline?
I don't know how they did it, so I really can't give you an answer for that. But what I'm understanding is that you have this pipe out, and then they remove they shut down the water, the air, and remove the habitat. Is that what you're saying?
The habitat was moved.
Yes, the evidence is this, is that the flange was fitted to the top of the riser.
Okay, now I understand.
Then the extension pipe was brought in through what I understand to be the stove, or put in so that it goes up into the stove, with the stove being above the water level, right? But it's all still within the chamber, right? And so this has been put in, bolted on to the flange, right? And then the hyperbaric chamber is removed. So in other words, all the time that this is being put on, again, as I understand the evidence, the pressure from the hyperbaric chamber remains.
Yeah.
It's only once the chamber is removed that you're taking the downward pressure that existed on the pipe away.
Yeah.
So as I understand the question, which I think is the same as what I was asking you before, is once you take away that PSI that's pressing down on the pipe.
But at the point in time that you're connecting the riser, my understanding, please, Mr. Chair, is at the point in time that the riser has been connected, the old section of what was there to the new section, right? Whether or not the hyperbaric chamber is there and present with the downward pressure, that pressure would no longer be applying to whatever's within that pipeline. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. But the question here is, how was the flange put on? By bolts?
Yes, it's bolted on.
So it was just it was here, you bolt it on, and then you remove everything?
Yes.
I don't see any effects of it, any further delta P taking place. I'm not seeing that. I don't know.
Well, I'm afraid you've got me confused now because I thought we'd already agreed. I don't know how else to describe it. The position is I thought, relatively simple. Either I'm right or I'm wrong about it. If the pipe has got a PSI, let's say for the argument's sake 10 PSI pressing down on the inside of the pipe, it's open, right? The pipe is open inside the hyperbaric chamber. The hyperbaric chamber is pressurized to, let's say, 10 psi. I don't think it's quite that much, but let's say it is for this argument's sake. That pushes all the water inside the hyperbaric chamber below the sea level, correct?
Yes, it will. It will.
I mean, it seems to me pretty straightforward. Can I borrow your glass for a minute, please? Just to use this as an example. That's the pipe coming up. It's open at the top, right? They put a hyperbaric chamber on the top of it like this.
Correct.
Pressurize the inside of that hyperbaric chamber. And what happens is the water level, if the sea level is here, it stays there on the outside, but by pressurizing this, you're pushing the sea level on the inside down to here.
Correct.
All right? The consequences of that are that you can then operate inside a dry area.
Correct.
Right? If this pipe is connected, is on the inside, and you're adding now a piece to this pipe, it makes no difference if you add a piece to that pipe, it stays within the hyperbaric chamber.
Correct.
Right? So long as it's above the waterline, once you then remove the hyperbaric chamber, then if the sea level is below, it doesn't matter, does it? It's not going to, the water's not going to go inside the pipe. Do you follow? You've got this on the top,
And then
the sea level's here, halfway down this glass, let's say, you put an extra piece of pipe on top of there so that it's above the sea level. That way, when you take this off, the water isn't going to go into the pipe.
I understand that,
Right. But you've got 10 psi pushing down on the inside of the pipe as well as on the inside of the hyperbaric chamber, haven't you?
right.
That whatever fluid is inside the pipe has pushing down on it 10 psi or 7 or whatever it might be. I think it's 7. It's, I think about 7.
6
but
or
anyway,
7.
the point is it's pushing down on that, isn't it? If you stop that force, downward force on the inside of the pipe, surely if there is a potential for delta P on the inside, that event, stopping the downward force, could cause it to occur. Surely.
Right, it would occur. Okay.
Yeah, so the minute you either depressurize this or take it off, the 7 psi that you've got pushing down on the fluid on the inside of that pipe stops. What do you think is likely to happen? You're pushing something down by 7
Water.
psi, you take your hands off it, it comes up, doesn't it?
Right. So what is the question? I still
So the
don't
question
understand.
she was asking you is really whether or not this was had the effect. She was trying to suggest, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, but once you put this extra piece of pipe on and take the pipe off, it should make no difference. Take that habitat.
Oh, no. It
does
goes
make a
back to-
difference.
It makes a difference.
Of course it makes a
no,
difference.
I understand that, yeah. Is that what you're asking?
Not quite, please.
Right, well, you put it the way you want to put it then,
What?
right? If I'm
At the
misrepresenting
time-
you, you get it.
At the time of the installation of the riser, the new section to the old section, what is essentially being created is one long pipe, one continuous pipe. That's my understanding.
Still under pressure.
Well, it can be under pressure or not, but it's a pressure that's outside of the pipe now. It's no longer, the pressure is no longer going onto the open of the pipe.
No, I don't
So when it would have been
I
cut.
hadn't understood that they were sealing it at all. In fact, the problem, as I understood it, is that the new pipe that went on had a little bar across the top of it, and that was getting in the way of anybody getting in and out of the pipe.
To the very top. That's to the very top.
Look, in a way, it doesn't really matter, does it? And I don't need to debate this with everybody.
Certainly.
I simply need to understand from the evidence, from you, sir, whichever way you do this, whether you take the hyperbaric chamber off first, whether you put a piece of pipe on first, I really don't care. I'm interested to know that once you stop the downward pressure of 7 psi on the inside of that pipe, once you stop doing that, will it change the dynamic of the inside of the pipe? The fluid that's in there. You're pressing down inside the pipe
And you remove
by
that?
7 psi.
Right.
And then you stop pressing down by 7 psi. What do you think will happen to the fluid that's in the pipe?
It's going to move.
It's going to move, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah. And the air pockets.
It might go gurgle, 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 or
Yeah,
whatever it
yeah.
does, you know,
It
and then
will
the
move.
air comes out and the fluid goes down. Any number of things could happen, couldn't it? But it's not going to stay the same.
No.
Thank you. That's what I thought we'd agreed earlier on.
Yeah, but I just didn't understand.
No, well, that's why I wanted to make sure I haven't misunderstood it either, because I don't want to go off on the wrong tangent. But that is the case, isn't it? If you remove that downward pressure on the inside of the pipe, it is going to have an effect. Whether it's a bad one or whatever, I don't know, but it's certainly going to have an effect, isn't it?
Yeah. I just don't understand your question about whether if you move the whole top, it will affect.
Understood, and I think that's the end of my question.
Excellent. We'll leave it there then. I'm sorry to have to ask you to come back tomorrow morning, Mr.
That's fine,
Chetty.
sir.
Would you mind at 9:30, please?
That's fine, I'll be here.
When we'll hear questions from Mr. Peterson and then Ms. Nairi Alfonso, and then anything else that Mr. Maharaj might want to ask. But I would expect you to be done within the hour.
Mr. Chairman, may I please remind you?
Oh, you did
Yes.
say you wanted to ask questions?
Yes.
You're going to find out from your client whether you want to contradict anything he suggested.
Yes, definitely. And if there is no need to put any questions to the witness, rest assured I wouldn't be putting any.
No, I'm sure you won't. Right, lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Yes. Yeah, from the prosecutor, from the checklist. Yes, you could go, sir. Thank you very much indeed. Come back tomorrow. Yes. Checklist and risk assessment for the other one, the previous job. What are we talking about?
That one we asked for the permit to work from the previous job in 2017.
Yes, permit to work. Mr. Peterson, there are a number of things that I think last week we left open for potential witnesses to obtain. You'll recall I asked Mr. Mushtaq Mohammed for a schedule.
I think I got all of those, sir. I think I got all of those. Possibly, I just got a message here. One may be outstanding, which may come within the hour or something.
I need trouble you no further. I'll find out what it is. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please feel free to go. I've got to grab my own papers, so thank you very much.